Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how you can build your first voice assistant using ADK that can completely manage your calendar. And what I want to do is give you a quick demo of this awesome agent in action. And then after that, we'll break down everything that you're going to be learning today to recreate this voice assistant yourself. So here's the voice agent that you guys are going to be creating today. As you can see, we have a nice little UI and it's about to manage our calendar for us. So let me show you this in action. So you just click enable voice and it'll start listening to us. Hey, what events do I have scheduled for tomorrow?
Okay. Tomorrow, May 15th, 2025, you have Steve and Brandon Hancock from 1 p.m. to 1:30 p.m.
Could you please create a event for tomorrow night from 5 to 7 p.m. that says date night?
Okay. I've added date night to your calendar for tomorrow, May 15th, 2025, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m.
I made a mistake. Can you actually move that over to Friday, please, at the same time?
No problem. I've moved date night to Friday, May 16th, 2025, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Oh, I just found out we actually have a scheduling conflict. Can you please delete this event?
Okay. The date night event has been deleted.
Yeah, so deleting usually takes an extra second, but all around, this is the voice agent that you guys are going to be creating. As you can see, it deleted it, and you can manage your entire calendar just by talking to it. The power of voice agent is insane, and I'm so excited to show you guys how you can build this for yourself. So let's go ahead and hop over exactly what we're going to be building today. Okay, guys, so let me break down everything that you're going to be learning today in this voice assistant tutorial, which is going to be broken down into two separate phases. In phase one, you're going to learn about all the basics when it comes to creating a voice assistant agent, such as how to create the appropriate agent with ADK, how to showcase which models you're allowed to use when it comes to working with voice agents, how to set up the instructions, and everything else you need to know. From there, you're going to see how we can connect all the specific tools necessary to your voice assistant agent to control your calendar. From there, we're going to quickly test this voice agent inside of the basic framework that ADK provides you, where you can easily spin up a website and we can start to chat with our agent. Now, this is great for testing. However, the ADK website that you can spin up is pretty constrictive and doesn't allow you to change a lot of the voice configurations, which is why in part two, we're going to be taking things even deeper, which is where I'm going to be showing you how you can set up your voice assistant agent. You can wrap it inside of a fast API service so that you can actually have a website that can communicate back and forth with your agent. A lot of people have been asking for this, so we're going to do a quick overview of how you can actually set all this up. And you're going to see, in this more deep dive section in part two, some of the core underlying configurations when it comes to running your agent and an actual website. So this is everything that we're going to be covering in phase two. And just quick reminder, everything that you're going to be seeing today, all the source code's completely for free. Just check out the link in the description below. And if you have any questions, drop a comment down below or hop over to the free Skool community that I've created for you guys. And I'm happy to help you over there as well. So, all right, let's go ahead and hop into phase number one and start setting up your voice assistant agent so we can start to test it all out. Oh, and real quick, if you're looking help on your AI projects and AI agents, I definitely recommend you checking out the free Skool community I created for AI developers just like you. So far, we have over 7,000 members of all skill levels. We have free weekly coaching calls where I get to hop on a call with you and all the other members to help out. And we have a bunch of other additional resources in the community. So definitely recommend checking out the link down in the description below. And I cannot wait to see you inside the community. Okay, so it's now time for us to dive into the code. But before we do that, I just want to mention I have set up this README in the source code that you can download, which walks you through all the necessary steps in order to get this agent up and running. Everything from how to install the dependencies, everything else when it comes to getting your Gemini API key that you're going to need to set up like this, as well as setting up your Google Cloud project, because you need to enable the ability for this agent to work with the Google Calendar API, how to create your credentials, and how to connect your agent to your calendar. So just if you follow steps 1 through 5, everything will work and you'll be able to run this agent like a champ. So I just want to call that out before we dive into actually running your agent. So with that out of the way, let's hop over to analyzing everything we need to create our first voice assistant agent. All right, guys, so now it's time for us to dive into our root voice assistant agent, which we're going to be calling Jarvis. And just a quick heads up, if anything that I cover is confusing, I definitely recommend checking out the ADK crash course that I've created for you guys, where I go so deep into all of the different properties and fields that we're going to be creating today. So first things first, we have one agent inside of our ADK project, which is called Jarvis, and the instructions for Jarvis can be found in this agent.py file that we have open right here. So let's dive into each of the properties that we have set up for our agent. So we have to give our agent a name, which we're just going to call Jarvis. Next, we have to define the model that we want to use for our agent. This one's super important because only certain models work with this voice assistant approach that we're taking. And right now you have to use one of the live models. So right now there's only one live model called Gemini 2.0 Flash Live. And as you can see, for inputs, it can take in audio, video, and text. In our case, we're doing audio. And it can spit out text or audio. And if you look back at what it's available, like its main purpose is low latency, which just means super fast, bidirectional voice and video. So that just means us talking to the model. It's great at it. And what it also has support for function calling, which is great because we're going to be doing a bunch of tool calls. So this model checks all the boxes of what we need. Definitely recommend checking out the Gemini API docs when you're watching this, because by the time you're watching this video, there could be a new model out that's even smarter than this live model. All right, so let's dive back to the code. So the next most important thing you need to know about in this agent are the instructions. The instructions basically just tell the agent, hey, here's what you can do. So let me walk you through the overview of how I've set up the instructions so you can understand exactly what's going on. So first things first, inside of the agent, we just give it a high level overview of what you can do. So in our case, we're saying, hey, you are a helpful assistant that can perform various tasks, including scheduling and calendar operations. And then we just list out all the calendar operations it can do, just so it has some context around what it's capable of. Then the rest of the instructions are guided around, how the agent needs to behave. So when you're talking, be productive. For example, if someone asks about what events they have without specifying a date, we're just going to use an empty string. You'll see more of why this is important when we dive into the tools in just a second. And from there, what we're going to do is next walk through all of the guidelines for each tool just to help the agent better understand what it should do in each situation. So when we're listing events, we're going to say, hey, you should just automatically use today's date. If no date format is mentioned, you need to use this one. We're only going to be working with a person's primary calendar ID, which is called primary. So we're just giving it instructions on how to best use the tools at hand. Outside of that, when it comes to creating events, we're just going to make concise titles. When it comes to start and end times, we're giving it more instructions around the formats, and we're going to be using the local time zone. Same when it comes to editing events, we need the event ID, which you can always get from calling the list events result. So we're basically telling the agent, hey, if you're ever told to edit something, you should first list the events to get all the IDs, then use the appropriate one. Finally, we're giving it some instructions around how it should respond. So for example, just reiterating, be concise. And then we have a few extra instructions to make sure that this agent, the 2.0 live model, never spits out the tool outputs, because for whatever reason, sometimes the agent will actually return like a Python dictionary with the raw computer output, and we do not want it to do it. That's one of the downsides of working with the 2.0 Flash model, is it's not the smartest model, but it's super fast and it can do audio, which is exactly why we're using it. So with that out of the way, what I want to do is now hop over to the tools one at a time so you can see exactly what available options our agent has when it comes to interacting with our calendar. And we're just going to go down the list of tools one at a time so you can see what each one of these tools does and how we can interface with it. All right, so let's look at all of the tools that your agent has access to when it comes to managing your calendar. And right now you have access to, like I said, creating events, listing events, editing events, and deleting events. So let's look at how these actually work and some of the best practices when it comes to creating tools so you know exactly what's going on. So first things first, the first tool we have access to is list events. All we can do for this one is basically, whole goal here is just to return back to our agent, oh yeah, you have 2 events tomorrow. So here's how we do that. Our tool has 2 parameters, start date, end date. As you notice, we all make sure that our parameters all have different types. This is to help the agent understand what information it needs to pass. We also, following best ADK practices, we have a doc string that lists exactly what this tool does, what the arguments need to do, and also what information is going to get returned. And finally, you need to make sure when working with ADK that you always make sure your tools return a dictionary. Okay, so what I want to do next is show you how this list event tool works. And the most important part is this is pretty much a wrapper around the calendar service from Google. So in order to get the calendar service working, what we have done is we have set up our local program to use our local credentials that you would have set up following the README. So following the README, you're going to create, I'll just show you real fast, so we're on the same page. Following the README, you're going to create a Google Cloud project. You're going to set up credentials. You're going to download those credentials to a JSON file, just like this. Then you're going to run the setup calendar authentication, which is going to allow your local computer to be authenticated to work with your calendar. So what's going to happen though is using these credentials, we will now have access to start making requests to the calendar. So that's all this function does right here. It just checks to make sure we have access to our credentials. From there, it's going to try to set all the credentials up necessary. And then finally, it's just going to build and return the calendar service. Because once we have the calendar service, we can start to make requests like, oh, list events, create events, edit events, delete events. So we're going to be using this in all of our tools. If you have questions on any of that, let me know. But this was, not the main part of what we're trying to focus on. So let's dive back in. So once we have our calendar service authenticated, our agent is ready to control our calendar. So in our case, we're just going to say, all right, when it comes to listing events, I want to get up to 100 different events. I'm going to access the primary calendar because everyone's Google Calendar has one default calendar, which has the ID of primary. And then from there, we're just going to set up some additional parameters to make sure things work properly, such as start time. For example, if the user passes in a blank start time, we're just going to default to use today as the default start time. Now, when it comes to the number of days, we're just going to default to 1 if something went wrong to determine how many days forward we want to scrape information off the person's calendar. And we're going to package all of this together into one nice function call. So you can see we're using our calendar service that we just made. We're going to call the events function. Once we get the events, we're going to call list with all of the different parameters, such as the calendar we want, the time. So like, oh, I want events for the next 3 days. That's controlled by min and max. How many results do you want to get? And basically we're going to get back a huge list of raw items that are on the person's calendar. If they weren't present, we're just going to return no events found. If there were events found, we're just going to do a little bit of formatting to pull out all the necessary data that we want and make it safe for our agents. So for example, if the summary didn't have a name, we're just going to call it untitled event. So we're basically just like pulling out the raw information we want and massaging it so it's more friendly for our agents. And once we have all of those events added to our formatted event list, we can return this to our user saying, hey, or to our agent, success, I found 12 events. Here are the 12 events. And this is how our agent will come up with a response. All right, let's keep cruising. We are on a roll. The next one is going to be create events. Super straightforward. Give me the summary of the event. When do you want it to start? When do you want it to end? Following best practices again with a doc string. We now can once again call the Google Calendar service. We're always using the primary calendar. And from there, all we're trying to do is get the local time zone in case we weren't given it, because by default, we're just passing around times, but not time zones. So we're just going to try and get the time zone in this format. Once we have the time zone, we can start to create our event body, which is going to basically have the summary. So like, oh, date with Carly or meet friends for coffee. So that's what we're going to put in here, the summary, and then the start and end time. And then once again, you're going to call Google services to insert to this specific calendar, the body, which is going to have the start time, end time, and summary, and then just return it back to the agent. All right, now I'm going to speed mode through the edit and the other one just because I'm hoping you guys are getting the gist of it. So edit event is a little bit more involved because we're trying to edit an existing calendar invite or existing calendar event, and we're trying to change a few things, potentially the title, the start time, the end time. So that's what we're trying to change. So this one is a little bit more in depth because what we're trying to do is we're going to call basically the exact same function, except for the updated event, you're going to pass in the existing event ID and then what you want the new information to be. So that's how you edit an event. And then finally, we're going to look at delete because delete is super straightforward as well. We're just going to pass in, hey, what event do you want to delete? Also, have the user confirmed that they want to delete the event? If so, we're just going to call delete on that event ID and just delete the event. So yeah, when it comes to using the tools, it's actually super straightforward. Hopefully the main takeaway that you had was we just need to do a lot of massaging to make things, pretty straightforward and friendly for our agents to use so that they, basically can form and articulate a better response when returning the information to the user. Okay, so now that you have seen how this agent works at a super high level and you've understand how all the tools work, what we can do is now run this local agent on our computer using ADK Web so you can see it in action. And I'm super excited to, showcase how this can work at a high level before we dive into, actually building out the raw application so you can see how our voice assistant can actually like chat and handle a bunch of, updating a UI at the same time. So let's hop into our first demo. All right, so now it's time to run our agent locally using ADK Web. And before we do that, I just want to call out a quick mistake I made earlier. When it comes to the model, you need to make sure you're using Gemini 2.0 Flash Experimental. For whatever reason, the live O1 models are not behaving appropriately with ADK and not working. So make sure you have this model instead. Super sorry about the confusion. But now let's go on to actually running this agent. So first things first, you need to make sure that you are in the app folder and you've activated your virtual environment that you would have set up following the README instructions. Once you've done that, you can type in ADK Web, and this will spin up a local website on port 8000, and we can now start to chat with our agent. So let me show you how we can, because this is a multimodal agent, we're gonna start texting it, and then afterwards we're gonna start talking to it. So let's look at this in action. So I can say, what events do I have tomorrow? And this agent should return back that, hey, you only have, oops, sorry, I hit the wrong button. Basically, it should return back that I only have one event tomorrow, which is the meeting with Steve. And yep, you have one meeting with Steve. So now what I can do is start talking to this model. So let's try it out. Can you please create an event tomorrow from 5 to 7 p.m. that says date night?
Okay. I've created an event called Date Night for tomorrow, May 15th, 2025. From 5 p.m. to 7 p.m.
So what's super cool about the audio part is we're actually talking with our agent. You guys didn't have to go deep into a lot of the behind the scenes things needed to actually run your agents. It's all handled inside of ADK Web. There are a few downfalls to it though. For example, you can't see what tool calls are made. You can't see which agent was responding. So this is the only downside of using ADK Web right now. They're actively making a ton of improvements though, so I'm sure they'll soon have this up and running. But this is a great way to quickly test out your voice agents. And the final thing I want to mention, I've had the best luck testing this out when it comes to like chatting with my agent inside of Chrome. Anytime I have used Arc or another browser, it has not worked as well. So definitely recommend chatting with your agent inside of Google Chrome. Okay, so now that we've covered all of that, let's hop over to phase 2, where you're going to start to see how we can wrap our agent inside of a fast API so that we can actually start having some communication between a website and our own local agents. So let's hop over to part number 2. So welcome to part 2, where you're going to learn how to connect your voice agents to a website so that you can actually chat with your voice assistant. But also the most important part of doing this step is you're going to learn how to actually configure some of the settings behind your voice agents, because when we were running ADK Web, Google abstracted a lot of stuff away from us and just handled stuff automatically. But in this part, you're going to see all the controls that you have access to when building out your voice agents. So let's hop over to the code to do a quick high-level overview of what we're going to be covering in part 2. So ultimate goal, we're connecting your agents to a website. So what we're going to be covering in this part is, first, we're going to be looking at this main.py, which is basically spinning up your agent. At the same time, it's going to be spinning up your website and allowing communication between both of them. When it comes to building out your website, we will briefly cover everything under the hood. So all of the, the quick website that you saw right here, you're going to see how we were actually able to create this website, how we were able to handle some of the events on the website. And we're going to be covering all of that in this phase. And that's mostly what we're going to be covering. So let's hop into first understanding everything that's going on inside of your main.py file, because this is how we're going to set up our agent and do some of those background configurations that are important for building real-world voice applications. So let's dive on in. Okay, so let's cover everything at a high level first inside of our main.py file, and then we'll drill down into some of the core components. So first things first, we are setting up a fast API application, which is basically going to allow us to view our website and to handle some WebSockets so our agents can connect to our website. Now, The main thing this is broken down into is to two parts. In part one, what we're doing is saying, hey, I have some static code, which just means I have my HTML files, my JavaScript files, my CSS files. Everything is saved in this static directory that I'll show you in just a second. And what I want you to do is anytime anyone goes to like localhost 3000 and just goes to the root page of this website, I want you to serve these files so that the user can see them. So this is, in our case, whenever we go to this website right here, we are on the root directory. So localhost 8000, we're in the root directory, basically just an individual /. Okay, so that's what's happening in part one. Now, in part two, this is where we start to set up some of the fun stuff where we have some WebSockets. So WebSockets are nothing more than a real-time connection inside of our application. In our case, we are setting up a real-time connection between our agent and our website. And we're going to refer to our website going forward as the client. So let's look at what's happening under the hood. So first things first, what we're going to do is spin up our agent session, which you'll see in just a second. And once we have our agent up and running, what we want to do is allow our agent to send messages to the client. Then we want our client to be able to send messages to our agents. And the way we do this is by sending messages back and forth through these two functions, agent to client messaging and client to agent messaging. And we're going to dive into both of those in just a second. And then what this statement is saying right here is just saying, hey, these tasks are both asynchronous tasks that are just going to run indefinitely. So just let these keep running forever as long as the application is running so that we continue to talk from website to application or website to agents and agents to website. So that's pretty much what's happening. So what I want to do first is dive into the agents because this is the fun part. And then afterwards, we'll do a brief overview of the website. So let's dive on into start agent session because this is the most important part when it comes to creating an agent. And quick recap, ADK Web, when we were running that command that spun up the website, it was handling all of this for us. So this is us peeling back the layers and doing it ourselves. And a lot of this was covered in the ADK crash course. So feel free once again to check out the session and runner section of the ADK crash course if any of this is over your head. But long story short, what we're going to do is create a new session. And a session is nothing more than a stateful chat history. What I mean by that is a session is just going to include messages from us and the agent, and it's going to just save them. And it's also going to have access to state. State is just where we can store stuff for short-term storage. And what we're doing in this session is to spin it up. We just have to say, what's the name of our application? What's the session ID? So we're just going to make up a brand new one for each connection. And we also are going to just use the user ID as the session ID. If you were building a real world application, you would want to put the user's ID here as well. Fantastic. So once we have a session created, we then need to run it. And when I say run it, what we're really doing is saying, okay, I want to run this agent using this session. That's pretty much all we're doing. And this is what's going to allow the agent to look at its session and be like, oh, I see all the messages in this session. I know what message to generate in response. So this is what our runner is going to do. It's going to combine our agents with the chat history so that the agents know what they need to be doing and can create an additional response. Fantastic. So now that we have our runner, what we're trying to do next is start to dive into some of the additional configurations that we can have when it comes to creating our voice agents. So what we're saying is we have the ability to respond in two different formats. So that's what modality is. So we can say, I want to respond with audio or text. So whenever we click this button down here, we're responding with audio. Whenever it's disabled, we're doing it with text. Great. Now, when it comes to configuring our voice, we actually have the option to configure a lot of different items. So what we can do first is we can configure which voice we would like to respond to. Everything that you've seen so far was using one of these agents, and in the next demo, you're going to see us use Puck. But you can easily switch up to a girl's voice, boy's voice, or whatever else you would like to do. And this is exactly how you specify which voice you want to use. It's kind of a shame that you can't add in a lot of other attributes like, hey, you need to respond in like a gravelly tone or be super excited. You can't do any of that right now, at least from what I can see. Whereas other tools like 11 Labs and OpenAI, you can do that. So hopefully Google adds in more support for that soon. Fantastic. So once we have set up how we want to respond, text or audio, and we've configured how we want our speech to sound, we're then just putting this in a nice configuration. And what we're trying to do is, you'll see in just a second, we're going to pass this run configuration into a run live. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so let's keep going step by step. So basically, we now have a configuration. What we're also going to do is if the user is using an audio response, what we want to do is say, okay, When we're using audio, what I want to do is provide the audio transcript. So back when we were in ADK Web and we were talking, we never got to see the agent's response in text. We only got to see the voice talking to us. So what this is going to do is, in addition to responding in voice, it's also going to respond the transcript. So you'll see in just a second, this field right here is going to show the agent's transcript in our website. Fantastic. So once we've set up all of our configurations, we're going to update our run config, and our run config is going to then be passed into our runner. And what we're going to do is say, all right, runner, I want you to run live. And this is how we're basically going to set ourselves up to run the agent in live mode, which is how we can, really chat with it in real time. The other thing that you need to create is a live request queue. And what this is going to do is, like, every time we pass an additional task, we send a message, we start to send over our voice, it's going to be added to this queue. So this is what's happening. And you can see we have our runner spun up, we have the session, we have the queue and our config. So now our agent is ready to go, and we're going to return two things: live events, and then we're going to return the queue. The queue is where we're going to be adding task to it, and the live events is how we can listen to the agent's responses. So that's everything that's happening inside of our start agent session. So what I would like to do next is dive into going from, in our case, client to agent. So this is our website shooting messages to our agent. And then after that, I want to dive in agent to client. So let's hop into this function first, and then we're going to move on to the next one. All right, so this function, super straightforward. What we're doing is passing in two functions. The WebSocket, so this is how we're able to, in real time, chat with our client. So we have to have that established connection. And then the other thing that we have to have is our live request queue. Because if you remember, our client is our website, and our website is going to be adding tasks, and all of our tasks get added to this live request queue. So here is what's happening. So we have one core loop, which is a while loop, which is just going to run forever. And what we're going to do is, in this client to agent message, we are going to wait to receive messages. So anytime right here, we pass in text or we pass in audio, these messages are going to be loaded here. Once we have this message, there is a concept called MIME type. MIME type can either be plain text, so when we send a raw text message, or audio PCM. So basically what you're seeing here is, like, I'm sending a text message or I'm talking to the agent. That's exactly what is happening right here. And this is just being streamed in real time. So every time we get a message, what we do if it's a text message is we go, okay, I'm going to create a new content. And content is basically, if you're familiar with like OpenAI, usually what you would do is each message you would create would have a user, and it'd have a role, and it would have a message. In ADK, it's a little bit more complicated. You have to pass in the role, and you have to pass in parts, and then in parts you say text. The nice part about this is what it allows you to do is, in one message, you can pass in some text, you can pass in an image, and some additional, like a video. So you could pass all of that in and include all of that in a singular message. So it's actually a little bit just more robust than what OpenAI allows for. So long story short, we are creating a text message, and we are going to send that text message over to our live queue. So we're going to add it to the queue, and this is what the agent is going to be just constantly listening to the queue and processing items on it. So great. So we're just going to send over the content. Now, on the other chance, if we're working with audio, so if we're talking to our agent, or really if we're talking to our website like this, we're going to be sending over every second, just continuous audio. And what is going to happen is we are going to take that data, we're going to decode it to byte 64 code, or basically data. We can now send this format because it needs to be base 64 in order to send it over to our agent. And now what you can see is, like, okay, I'm going to send in real time. What am I going to send? I'm going to send a blob. So a blob is an image, audio file, video. Blob is just anything that's not just raw text. And we're going to say, hey, I'm sending you a blob. This blob is, base 64 audio, and the MIME type of it is audio PCM. And what we're doing is just saying, all right, agent, here's more audio, and just sending it over. So we're just sending as fast as we can. We're just sending more and more audio over to our agent, so our agent can process this audio, generate a response, think about it, and send it back to us. Speaking of the agent sending information back to us, what I want to do next is cover the agent to client messaging, because this is how our agent is going to start sending information back to us. So let's go through this. Once again, what we have is two parameters. So this time we have a WebSocket. Once again, that's how we have our real-time connection between our agent and our website. Then we have live events. So events are responses from the agent. So the agent can say like, hey, here's some text. Oh, here's an audio response. This is the agent sending us information. So what we're doing in here is just saying, hey, just run this single loop forever. Every time we get a live event, so this is a response from the agent, I want you to process this event. And the agent could potentially send a bunch of events back at once. That's what we're doing. So what we're saying is like, okay, first thing we want to check for, did the agent tell us that the turn was complete or interrupted? So basically what this is saying is like, hey, did the agent interrupt us, or did the agent finish basically a voice response? So for example, after the agent goes, hey, tomorrow you have 2 calendar events scheduled, period. Well, at that point, the turn is complete. The agent is done talking. So now we can process that. So that's where we're going to, you'll see in just a second, we're going to send from our agent to our client to let it know, hey, we're done talking. We're good. We're ready. We're back in listening mode. The other option is to read content. So this is when the agent is going to start to send over information back to us that is more text related. So we're just doing some validation here. And eventually we get to this part right here. So if the message that was sent back to us, the event, if it was text and partial, what we're going to do is send this message to our WebSocket that's going to start to show up on our website. So long story short, when the agent is talking to us and responding, because we agreed just a second ago that we were going to do, sorry, there's too many things popping up. There we go. So when the agent starts to type out text back to us, what's happening is each one of these is actually a partial bit of text. So instead of waiting for the agent to send the entire text message back to us, we're basically streaming the response in full time. So this has that like streaming effect. So we're just handling, every time the agent streams in some more text, just show it here in real time. So that's exactly what we're doing here. And so the partial is what tells us this is just a snippet of the full response, and it's a snippet of a text response. And this is what we're going to send to our website, and our website's going to load this in real time. You'll see that later on when we hop over to our app.js file. Fantastic. Next, what we're going to say is like, okay, the other option is the agent could talk back to us. And if the agent talks back to us, what we want to do is just verify that it is text message. And if it is audio, if it is audio, what we want to do is go, okay, great. I have audio data and I want to send this audio data as a message to our front end website. So everything is always sent with text. So regardless if we're sending text message or we're sending audio, it's always getting done with send text. And just the front end website knows, oh, I'm receiving an audio message. I need to play it. Or, oh, I'm receiving a text message. I need to show it on the screen. So you're going to see all that complexity on the front end in just a second. But per usual, in a message, we're just saying what type of data is it? From there, we're passing in the raw data. So this is where we're going to now encode our audio that we get back to base64 and then just add some additional formatting. From there, what we're going to do is send it over to our front end so we can show it on our website. So that is what's happening in a nutshell. Now, what I would like to do next is hop over to our app.js file and go over some of the core functionality of how we're handling listening to those text messages, how we're handling listening to those audio messages, and how we're actually sending over voice and text to our agent. So let's dive into app.js because this is super important. All right, so let's dive into this app.js file because this is the file that contains all the logic for our website application. Specifically, this file helps set up the connection between our agent and our website and all the data transfer between back and forth. Now, if you have any questions on anything that I don't cover deep here, what you can always do is chat with the code, download it for free, and just say, hey, please explain this to me. I'm not sure what this does. How does this connect? Like, dive deep into this and have the agent explain it to you. Put those AI super geniuses to work. So let's go through this top to bottom, explain the most core functionality of this app.js file. All right, first things first, we need to connect our WebSockets. If you remember, our WebSocket is the real-time connection between us and our agent. Specifically, this WebSocket real-time connection is going to connect to this port right here. So we're going to go connect to our application that's running in our main.py file. And we're going to say, hey, I would like to connect to this WebSocket on this session ID. And that's exactly what we're doing right here. We're saying, hey, here's my WebSocket URL. It comes from setting this up right here. WebSocket, our localhost, port 8000 /WebSocket /session ID. And it's basically the same thing that you see right here. Fantastic. So once we have created that URL and created a new WebSocket, what we want to do is just handle a few of the core things, such as, hey, the WebSocket is open, and we're just going to handle a lot of this. I'm going to speed through just because like a lot of it's basic JavaScript stuff. But basically we're saying like, okay, we are now created our connection. What we're going to do is enable the send button. So I'm going to stop talking about, all DOM manipulation and just keep it high level so you can understand, what we're doing. So what we're going to do is we're going to handle whenever the WebSocket opens, and then we're going to start to say things like connected. So we're going to update that. Next, what we want to do is handle the event on our WebSocket when a new message is sent to us. So if you remember, messages sent to the website can be audio and text. So here's exactly how we're handling it. First things first, we're going to parse the data that was sent to us, and then we're going to try to identify what information was sent to us. For example, was the message that was sent to us, was it a turn complete, meaning the agent's done talking? If so, we're going to handle things differently. However, if the agent did send us text or audio, what we're going to do is show the typing indicator. So when the agent is sending a response to us, we're going to show that little typing indicator in the top hand corner. If the agent, for whatever reason, sent that, hey, this was a turn complete, like I'm done talking, what we're going to do is then, basically handle that scenario where we're going to remove that typing indicator. So we're going to say, yep, the agent is done talking. No more reason to show the little typing indicator. All right, great. So let's handle the next scenario. If the message that was sent to us was audio, we have something called an audio player node. I'm going to just briefly call it out so you can see it. But basically we have a JavaScript file that handles playing audio. Not going to go deep into this, but just know this is the file that handles playing audio for us. And what we're going to do is say, all right, audio player node, here is the message that I just received. Play the audio. As straightforward as that. And outside of that, the next thing that we want to handle is if we receive a text message. So if the message from the server is type text, what we want to do is start to showcase in the top right hand corner. We want to get rid of the typing message. And at this point, we actually just want to start to show the full message as the partial text pieces start to flow to us. So we're just going to stream them in real time and add them right here. So that's exactly what we're doing. So drop the visible icon, and then basically we're saying hey, if the message element already exists, we're going to append to it. So that's where we were basically just adding in additional text as it streamed in. However, if this message box doesn't exist, we're going to create a new one, then start adding text to it. So that's all we're doing right here. Hopefully that helps. Now I'm going to skip through some of this because a lot of it's just, regular HTML and that we're manipulating the DOM. So I'm going to forget that part. Then next, what we want to do, if for whatever reason the WebSocket closed, what we want to do is change this to say, hey man, the WebSocket's closed. We can actually show this right now. So if I kill the website that was running, you can see, boom, disconnected. I'm trying to reconnect, but I can't. So yeah, on close, we're just going to continually try to reconnect. If I spin it back up, you can see we will connect again in just a second. Probably, yeah. So every 5 seconds it's trying to reconnect and boom, it reconnects. Pretty cool. Finally, what we're wanting to do next is just do some generic on error handling to just say, hey, something went wrong. All right, now that we have the core infrastructure of creating the WebSocket, closing the WebSocket, handling when we receive a message from the agent, now what I want to do is go into the final part where we're sending information from our website to our agent, which gets handled, in these few functions that we're about to look at now. All right, so add submit handler. So at this point, this is whenever we type in a message. So whenever we're typing here, hey, what is today's date? When this is us calling on submit and sending this message over. So that's this function right here. And all we're doing is just adding a user message. User messages are blue, pop up on the right-hand side of the screen. Pretty straightforward. The main thing that you need to know is we're calling the send message function. The send message function, all it does, uses the WebSocket to send information back to basically send information over to this WebSocket so we can properly process it. Okay, what are we trying to do next? Well, that's us sending a text message, but how about when we want to start to send over some audio? Well, sending audio is actually not really sending audio, but it's mostly just handling the streaming functionality. So let me show you what I mean by that. So the second someone clicks start audio, so whenever I enable voice, we're starting to talk to our agent. So what's happening here is we're changing up all the code. So it goes from enable voice to stop voice, but most importantly, we're calling the start audio function. What the start audio function does is it spins up a recorder. A recorder, we have another thing for it. So I'll type it in. So we have a recorder right here. And this is what is in real time, listening to our microphone, working with that data, putting it to the right sample rate, and then sending in real time all of that information back and streaming it back over to our WebSocket. And that way it goes from WebSocket to our server, and our server has the agent processing it. I'm not going to go super deep, but just know this is pretty much all you need to do to start audio. Is you're using those two nodes, the audio recorder, who's going to start listening. All right, yeah, and that's pretty much it. So what I want to do now is just show you guys a quick demo of this in action back on the website. And as I'm talking through it now, just recap what was happening on the website. So let's do a quick final demo. All right, so I'm going to enable voice, and then we're going to start chatting with this voice assistant, and I'm going to show you some of the logs and explain exactly what's happening. Hey, what's today's date?
Today is May 15th, 2025.
So it's really cool that just happened, because I'm going to kill this and start it over again. So you can see in real time, once we turn on enable voice, it's just constantly sending over audio file. And these are all just little bits of bytes. So as we're talking, this is just constantly listening to our microphone and streaming in real time. And as you saw at the end, it responded back today's date. And once it was done, it sent out that, hey, agent to client, I am done. So turn complete true. And this is what, how we know we're done with this specific message. So that was really cool. And what you'll notice, if you keep scrolling up, you're not going to really see any information from agent to client that's text. All you're going to see is agent to client, which is where we set up earlier. We set up that, hey, I would like to receive a transcript in real time. So right here, this is when it comes to output audio transcript. That's the reason why the agent is sending us the transcript in the form of a text. And in real time, it's just streaming partial little snippets that are getting built up and put into this final message. So we're just like we're just sending parts by part of this message until it's fully set up. Okay, so I'm going to enable it again. And then this time, just to show you something different, I'm going to say, what events do I have for the rest of the day? Now, in this one, when I send it, if I can scroll all the way down, what you're going to start to see is, okay, client to agent, you're going to see the exact message. So this is exactly what we've been working on. So hopefully this is making sense of like, oh, I can see now how audio is sent back and forth, how text is sent back and forth. And because there was no audio this time, you can see when it comes to agent to client, it was still streaming the response back and forth to us. So you can see this time there's no agent to client audio, it's all text. And this time when it's responding text, it was able to return information in basically longer snippets because it wasn't doing all the processing, which takes longer. Processing text is way faster than processing audio. So yeah, that is our voice assistant in a nutshell, guys. If you have any questions on any of this, always drop a comment or head over to my Skool community. Always happy to assist you guys over there. Also, a lot of this was used for inspiration from what basically Agent Development Kit has set up in their audio streaming application tutorial. I'll have a link to it down in the description below. But basically, I felt like theirs was very minimalist and did not do a best job of actually showcasing all the capabilities. So I added some more functionality to this. So definitely recommend checking this out as well for further details on what they're recommending. So yeah, that is everything when it comes to setting up your voice assistant. So just as a quick recap, you guys are now experts at building voice assistants with Agent Development Kit. And you got to see a quick sneak peek of how you can connect your agents to your front end. And don't worry, I'm going to be doing a deep dive into this exact topic probably sometime next week. So make sure you hit the like and subscribe so you're notified the next time a video comes out. And in the meantime, I have a ton of other Agent Development Kit crash courses right here on my channel, LangChain, Core AI, full stack AI development. I have it all. So I definitely recommend checking out whatever videos popping up right now, and I cannot wait to see you guys in the next video. See ya and hope you have a great day.